Hello everyone, it is Cruz-sensei, and today we are going to talk about diacritical marks and contracted sounds. So you can actually create 23 additional sounds by adding diacritical marks to them. With a short diagonal stroke, which is referred to as dakuten, the unvoiced consonants become voiced consonants. So K will become G, S will become Z, T will become D, H will become B, and then if we put a small circle called a handakuten, it will have the same effect. This is only used on the H characters, which will have it become P. Now, how in the world are you going to remember that this becomes that? Something that I want you to think about is if you were to try to pronounce these letters one after the other. So k and g, k and g, s and z, s and z. Notice that they sound pretty similar. So for these first three, you can put them together as in, okay, k, g, both have similar sounds. Your mouth and tongue will actually move the same way while you try to make these sounds. The only difference is that when you go in for that other one, so K versus G, the G makes your throat vibrate. So you can put your hand to your throat and you can say k, and then you can say g. And you'll notice that you feel that vibration in your throat as you say g, s, and z. Again, you have that very heavy vibration on the z in comparison to the s. Then we have our next one here, which is my favorite personally. Ta, in this case, would become da. So t, d, t, d. You can think of it as if you're saying ta-da, and that'll be an easier way to try to remember what kind of sound you're going to make there. Then we have H to B and H to P. A little more difficult to try to make a comparison between these because B, P don't really have any similar sounds going to them. So I want you to think of it as if it's a happy birthday party, or you are receiving a happy birthday present. H, B, P. They're all going to work together because they all come from H. So happy birthday are going to be linked together in order to make the sound that comes with this character here, the dakuten. So ha will become ba. Then if you have the circle one and you really want to find a way to help remember this, think about this little circle here, the handakuten. It looks like a bubble. If I pop the bubble next to an H character, that means it's going to pop, which means it'll make a p sound. So you're popping that bubble there in order to make that p sound. And then this is just going into the different ways that we would use these to pronounce different things. So if we put the dakuten on anything in the K row, it goes from being ka, ki, ku, ke, ko to ga, gi, gu, ge, go. Then we have our S row, sa, shi, su, se, so, will become za, ji, zu, ze, zo. Hopefully you notice what just happened there. This did not become Z, it became G. Now, remember the fact that we don't say si in Japanese, we say shi. So because of that, we also have to change our sound when we add the dakuten. So shi would become ji. Then we move on to the T's. So ta, chi, tsu, te, to is going to become da, ji, zu, de, do. Now, special thing going on here with these guys because chi and tsu are similar to shi from the S row in the sense that they don't follow the regular parameter of sounds. So I don't say T and tu, so I'm not really going to say D and do. Instead, I would say ji and zu. Now, how am I going to know the difference between using this version of ji and the version of ji that uses the shi character? I will tell you, more often than not, if something has ji in it, it's spelled with the shi character. Same thing with the zu. More often than not, it's going to be spelled with su with the ten, the dakuten. So this is just so you know what kind of sounds they make. Now let's look at our H row. We have ha, hi, fu, he, ho. If we add that dakuten, it becomes ba, bi, bu, peppo, and you can see what they look like there. Then with our handokten, as we mentioned before, it's only going to be used with the H row. So we have ha, hi, hu, he, ho will become, as soon as it wants to come up, pa, pi, pu, pe, po. Contracted sounds. So when we're talking about contracted sounds, this is using ya, yu, and yo. You make them smaller, about half the size of your other characters, and they follow after characters in the second column. So anything that has an E in it. So for example, he, ki, she, that kind of thing. They're all used to transcribe what are called contracted sounds, and they'll actually represent a single syllable. So ki with a small ya would become kya. And you can see here the difference. So we have kiya, but look at the size difference. These are at the same height. This one you can see is definitely shorter. So this is kia, but this one is kya. I want you to think that because this character is smaller, think of it like you're running down a hill. So kya, we're making our way down because we want to rush to get to that second smaller character. So here are just some different examples of how we use these. Kya, kyu, kyo, sha, shu, sho, cha, chu, cho, nya, nyu, nyo, hya, hyu, hyo, mya, myu, myo, rya, ryu, ryo. And the thing is, we can also use diacritical marks with contracted sounds. So gya, gyu, gyo, ja, ju, jo, bya, byu, byo, pya, pyu, pyo. Important thing to note here is that if you happen to use these with the character she or ji, if you're using the diacritical mark, notice that it doesn't take the y along for the ride. So I'm not saying xia, I'm just saying sha. I'm not saying jiu, I'm saying ju. All right, next up, we're going to talk about double consonants. So similar to how we can make ya, yu, and yo smaller, now we're going to make tsu smaller. When written, the letter after the small letter tsu is actually going to be doubled. So for example, I have the word here, ka, tsu, ta. But then if I make this one smaller, it becomes katta. Now listen to what I'm doing there, katta. It's almost like I have a hiccup in my throat. I'm like, katta. I have to take that little breath. You can also think if this is a rock in the road and you trip over it, and you're like, oh, I'm tripping to get to that next character. So katta. Instead of katsuta, I'm saying katta. It's cutting this really short to rush to that second character. Double consonants with an n and a na-ro character do not receive the small letter tsu. You just won't really see it. So for example, sannen, you won't see sa-nen. Sannen is a thing that can happen. Sa-nen is not a thing that would happen. All right, and that is going to be it for now. I do have some questions that we are going to use for review, so be on the lookout for those when we get into class. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.